Hello and welcome to this special weekend edition of Asia Today. It's been a troubled year for the people of Burma. The country has been racked by spiralling commodity and fuel prices, violent protests, a brutal government crackdown, and of course, more recently, one of the worst cyclones to hit Asia in recent times. In a moment, we'll discuss what lies ahead for the troubled nation. First, though, let's take a look at what's led to this current situation. On the 15th of August last year, the government increased the cost of fuel. Both petrol and diesel doubled in price, forcing up the price of public transport and other commodities right across the country. Angered at the move, pro-democracy activists led a demonstration through Rangoon on the 19th of August. It was the largest demonstration in the military-ruled nation for several years. Throughout September, the country's monks joined the protest. The numbers increased by the day. The authorities eventually used force. The worst day of the violence, the 27th of September. The ruling junta said 9 people were killed. The death toll, though, is thought to be much higher than that. Thousands of demonstrators were arrested. Many monks, civilians and a Japanese journalist thought were killed. The US and the EU tightened sanctions on the country, but China, Russia and India were less vocal in their criticism of the military junta. Then remember, to compound the country's problems, that horrific cyclone we saw in Burma on the 3rd of May, the worst to hit Asia since 1991. It was called Cyclone Nagas. It packed winds of up to 190 kilometres an hour. It destroyed entire villages. It killed tens of thousands of people. The country's communication towers were destroyed, and many facilities, including jails, schools and hospitals, were severely damaged. The government came under strong international condemnation. People said they were too slow allowing international aid into the country. And just last month, the country's pro-democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi celebrated her 63rd birthday. She is still under house arrest. She's been detained now for more than 12 of the last 18 years. Well, let's talk about what's happening in Burma. I'm joined here in the studio by Myo Thein, whose brother is being held inside a Burmese jail, and the author, Justin Wintle, who wrote a book on Aung San Suu Kyi. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here on Asia Today. Looking at that, what an unbelievable year Burma has had. But do you feel, Justin, at the moment that perhaps international interest is waning in the country?
Well, it is to a certain extent. In the colonial period, the Burmese were always known as the Irish of the East. But they've never had the luck of the Irish at all. Along comes this dreadful cyclone. 2 weeks later, there's this mighty earthquake in Sichuan, China, and the focus moves away from Burma. And that is just one of the colossal misfortunes.
And Myo, do you feel a sense of disappointment, perhaps, that the international community may have dropped the ball a little bit in terms of Burma?
Well, international community, they need to do more. For the time being, little have been done, especially the United Nations. For the United Nations, we wanted to see more action taken by them. So, United Nations organization got the tremendous responsibility. We are looking for the more positive and bolder lead of that organization. But for the time being, little have been done, and we need to see more.
And Justin, you've been back since the cyclone. Can you tell us a bit about what's happening inside the Irrawaddy Delta?
I've not been inside Burma since the cyclone. I'm persona non grata there because of my book. But what I hear is all sorts of things. First of all, Rangoon itself, the largest city in Burma until recently Burma's capital, things are really running down there. There are constant power cuts, the water's not clean, a lot of people are complaining of diarrhea, so my sources tell me who are going in and out. Then in the Delta itself, you've got a situation where aid is getting through, but in a very patchy kind of way. You've got aid workers, foreign aid workers, being allowed in on 2-week visas.
Not enough time, is it?
Which is not enough time for them to consolidate their work. And very often they have to return to base at night.
And why do you
so
think
forth.
that is?
Because the regime wants to keep control. It is not particularly interested in looking after the best interests of its people. One of the things that I've heard is happening is that certainly in the early days after the cyclone, the food started arriving. Some of that was siphoned off for the army. Now the regime's main objective is to make sure that the army is kept fed, and they've lost a lot of the harvest.
Now, the regime actually denied this. It's been an allegation that's been levelled at them before. Are you hearing this, Myo, that the regime perhaps is misappropriating the aid that's getting in?
Well, regime is always trying to lie to the international community, honestly. they always try to cover up what they have done to the public or to the political prisoners, and to the international community as well. So this is the tactics of the regime. They have been using for nearly half the century. The current regime practices torture, murder, rape, political imprisonment for the practices for the ruling the citizen of Burma, including my brother.
Your story, I was about to ask, it's a very personal one, obviously. Your brother is currently in detention in a Burmese prison. Can you tell us his story?
Yes. His health situation is now very deterioration because he received the very severe torture during the interrogation. He was arrested on the 40th of December 2007 by the special police and the military intelligence and the Swan. And then after that, we lost contact with him for nearly 1 month, and we don't know where he's about, and no one informed us where he is. During interrogation, he was surveyed very seriously. And then on 28th of January 2008, our mother can see him for the very first time. And then heart-breaking scenes appear. Before the arrest, once healthy and a fit person turned into the one who cannot walk by himself. Because of the torture he received, as a consequences, he sustained damage, something in his heart, and his nervous system appeared to have, his nervous system is malfunctioning. He's vomiting, he cannot sleep, he cannot walk as well.
What has happened since those demonstrations? He was arrested and put into prison, but generally there was such anger that we witnessed then. We haven't seen it as much recently. Are people incredibly fearful? Why have they stopped coming out onto the streets, perhaps?
I think people are fearful. I mean, it's worth pointing out, although the world's cameras were aware of what was going on in September, often through sort of mobile cameras and so forth. The turnout last September did not compare with the massive turnout of 1988, and I think that there is a terrible fear of what the regime will do. Myo Thein has just talked about the obscene things that have happened to his own brother.
But, for my opinion, military regime, uses the guns and the batons. The world witnessed the brutality of the regimes. They opened fire on the, Buddhist men and the, or the public. And so, but even though a lot of people risked their life and sacrificed their lives, and hundreds of people lost their life in that demonstration, and a lot of people got arrested. Buddhist monasteries were raided, and political dissident house were raided, and they faced the torture during the interrogation. My brother is only one of the example who faced the serious torture. There are a lot of people who need the medical attention right now. And for instance, like the journalist Myo Thein, who has been in prison for 19 years, he's suffering from the asthma as well.
Do you think we're going to see these people, the monks as well, rise up again?
Yes, people of Burma, they have been longing for the democracy and human rights for the very long time. They sacrificed their lives. They showed their desire. And how many lives more need to sacrifice to take action on Burma by the United Nations and the international community?
And Justin, there she is, Aung San Suu Kyi. I mean, what a powerful figure she remains.
Well, indeed she is, though there are also concerns about her health as well. The last time she appeared in anything like public, when she met Dr. Gambari from the UN last year, there was a photograph of the two of them, and she was terribly thin and emaciated. And there are concerns about her fear, but as long as she's there, the Burmese people will have hope, and she is so steadfast, as indeed is Myo Thein, the gentleman that...
But, you talk, I mean, you're full of anger, we can sense that, and rightly so, perhaps. And you want the international community to do something, but it seems that China perhaps is the only country that could have influence, and they're doing this gently approach, which is never really going to work, is it?
But,
what do you want to happen? What can you see happening?
I would like to see the collective action taken by the international community, focus on the essential, focus on the,